Hello, everyone. Welcome to a Wall Street from Main Street podcast. My name is Mo Daoud, and today's special guest is Mark Thornton. He's a senior resident fellow at the Mises Institute, and he's the author of The Economics of Prohibition. Mark, thank you for joining me.
Hey, Mo. It's great to be here with you today.
Well, Mark, I wanted to talk about your background for a little bit. When I started reading about you, I noticed that in 2004, you predicted a housing bubble, and actually, I have the article in front of me right now. The title of your article was Housing, Too Good to Be True. So I wanted to start this podcast by talking about that. What did you see that made you believe that there was a bubble in the housing market?
Well, here at the Mises Institute, our scholars had been talking about the housing bubble and writing about it as early as 2003. And so it was not a secret, really, to us that there was a housing bubble, that housing prices were rising significantly, that home construction had increased significantly beyond any historical norms. And also, we did not have a housing correction during the recession of 2001. So it was very, very fishy as to what was going on here. And of course, the Federal Reserve had pushed down interest rates so that the federal funds rate that they control was at the historically lowest level in its history at 1%. So all the ingredients were there to label it a housing bubble. And of course, we also talked about what was causing it, the Federal Reserve, and what ultimately would come undone and how that would negatively affect the economy and push us into recession, and then, of course, all of the complications that occur because of the fact that it's home mortgages, where people are contractually obligated to make payments over a long period of time, and other things that we noticed was all the funny financing in these mortgages, no documentation, loans, 100% financing, teaser rates on the mortgages, and so all of the conditions were there to describe it as a housing bubble, and people were not pleased at us, and me in particular, because it wasn't just that article, but I was going around giving speeches, and people didn't like what I had to say. Everybody else was saying, you can't lose money in real estate. Housing prices never go down. You can always make money in housing. That's generally what people were talking about at the time. So it was a very unpopular position to take, but I felt that as I saw and heard more people saying these things about housing, that I had to stand up and tell people what was actually going on. And I got a lot of calls, a lot of letters, a lot of emails, probably more about that article than anything I've ever published as a Mises Daily on Mises.org. And, and people were asking my advice. And, I just said that this is the situation and the outcomes here are not going to be good, and that people are going to, a lot of people are going to be underwater on their mortgages as this bubble breaks down.
And I just find it unbelievable that people take it so personally when someone comes out and trying to warn people there's a housing bubble coming. And I like people like you, Peter Schiff, and other Austrian followers and economists that try to warn people receive a lot of backlash from the mainstream media and from people on Main Street as well.
Yeah, well, when I felt a lot better when bigger name people like Peter Schiff started talking about the housing bubble, I guess in 2005 and 6. At least I wasn't all alone with a couple of guys here at the Mises Institute. But to illustrate your point, I did this piece where I discussed luxury game day condominiums here in Auburn, where construction firms were building multi-story condominium buildings in downtown Auburn for the purpose of selling them to football fans of Auburn University. So the idea here is you buy a luxury condominium for, say, $300,000 or $400,000 for the purpose of having a place to stay when you came to Auburn to watch an Auburn football game. And so that's what was going on in 2005, 2006, and and some of them were going up in 2007. And so I gave a talk at the university where I basically pointed out that this is very unusual, I was highly skeptical of that notion that you could sell these condominiums for very high prices, very small condominiums, for the purpose of, just coming to the football games. And I said, this just doesn't make sense. And the response that I usually got back was, well, you can always sell the condominium for more money in the future, which that only reinforced my opinion and my analysis that something was surely wrong here. And so I gave this speech on campus. It was publicized. I think it was the economics department, the economics club that sponsored the event. And a lot of people from town showed up, a lot of developers and construction people. And let me tell you, they were not happy. And I actually got a little nervous because I was at one end of the room with the crowd in between me and the exit. So I was a little bit nervous there because you could tell that it was a very intense situation, and that people were starting to sort of lose their temper in the question and answer period. And I was just happy to get out of there without an incident.
I guess it's normal for a human being that, put a lot of money and time into, the real estate or the houses and condos that they buy, that when someone comes out and say you're making a big mistake, they try to rationalize why they do it and just get angry at you or Peter Schiff.
Yeah, well, the same is also true for the people who took my advice or took my analysis anyways. And I had several people call me and write me and said, we want to buy this house, but we're worried about the market. And I said, well, if you plan on staying in that location for a very long period of time and you can make your payments, and that's what you're thinking over the long haul, you won't be hurt. But if you take a funny loan and your job situation isn't steady, your location situation isn't steady, it could be a big problem. And I got a lot of response after the fact, after the bubble burst and housing prices crashed, where people were saying, thank God you warned us. I had this one real estate developer actually come to the Institute to talk to me, and he said that, based on, and this was like in 2006, he said that based on, what I read of you and based on what I see in the marketplace, I decided to sell my company. I decided to sell all my inventory of homes, and he said that he's going to retire, that he's put all of his money into gold, and he just wanted to stop by and thank me. And the only thing I could think to say is to him, I said, well, could you please bring me with you? Because he was going to Florida to retire and build a home for himself and a compound for his sons and daughters and their family, and that was probably a really good move on his part.
Yeah, that's a great story. It's good to hear that people actually were rational and listened to your advice and did the right thing. This guy probably banked a lot of money before the housing bubble crashed and buying gold as well.
Yeah, he made a lot of money and he cashed out at the right time, and he invested it in something that's gone up significantly since then. And that was those stories, those emails, a couple letters that I got after the bubble crashed was some of the most satisfying things that have happened to me in my professional career.
Well, yeah, definitely keep at it. And then hopefully maybe you, I don't know if you have, but have you talked about the college bubble that's currently going on in this country as well? Because a lot of similarity between the housing bubble and the college bubble as well.
What was the bubble?
The college tuition bubble?
Oh, yes. Well, the Fed, the central banks, and indeed central banks around the world are in a currency war, and they brought interest rates down to zero. So we have a zero interest rate policy. We have the quantitative easing policies in many, many central banks. And so they're creating bubbles all over the world. And so in the U.S., we have a stock market bubble. We have a bond bubble. We have a reignited real estate bubble. We have a bubble in contemporary modern art, agricultural land, student loans, higher education in general. And so they're definitely causing the same sort of problem. Here in Auburn, they're building 2 giant complexes for luxury student housing, and so they're doing the same thing over again. They're trying to reignite bubbles to cure the economy, and central banks can't cure an economy. They can only make problems in the economy. They can only cause distortions, misallocations, and malinvestments. The thing that solves problems in an economy, the thing that corrects for all of this mischief that central banks have done, is the entrepreneur. The entrepreneur finds resources, land, labor, and capital at low prices, and puts that land, labor, and capital back together in a way that's going to satisfy consumer demands and make a profit. And so the price of capital, and the price of land, the price of a lot of things, the Federal Reserve is trying to prop that up, thinking that that's going to solve the problem. It doesn't. It just continues on the economic malaise. And then, of course, the entrepreneur is being threatened by taxes, the national debt, regulations, Obamacare, the financial regulations that are crippling the finance and banking and mortgage lending. And so they're doing all the wrong things. They should be getting out of the way of the entrepreneur. They should try to be less of a threat to the entrepreneur, and then that entrepreneur is going to go out there and piece back the pieces in the economy, serving consumer demands, putting people to work, and making money. But making money from producing and investing. Today's economy, people are making money by churning the easy money that's coming from the Federal Reserve, so that the people who are making the money are the bankers, the hedge fund managers, the people who are wealthy, and the people who own the stocks and bonds. They're making a killing, while the average American who doesn't have lots of stocks and bonds and savings is getting hammered.
And that's a great point. Now, I also want to talk about another interesting article that I read about you on Mises, and it's about the correlation between tall skyscrapers and economic contraction. There's an article on Mises called "The New Skyscraper Curse," and let's talk about that article and tell the audience why there's a correlation between having tall skyscrapers in cities and how that relates to the economy.
Sure. Well, in the tech bubble of the late 90s and early 2000s, I came across this report that looked at the eerie correlation between record-setting skyscrapers and world economic crises. And that correlation went back almost 100 years. And I realized immediately the implications for Austrian business cycle theory, because skyscrapers are, capital, they're investments. And a lot of those skyscrapers that the report referred to never made any money and very often went bankrupt because they opened up during these economic crises. They'd set the new record and the economy would go into crises, and all of these record-setting skyscrapers usually turned out to be bad investments. So it fit in perfectly with the Austrian business cycle theory, which says that if the central banks hold interest rates at artificially low levels, they'll stimulate investments and they'll stimulate profits for capital. They'll rise stock markets, and they'll create a boom in the economy, and people become very speculative, and they make bad investments at this time. And then ultimately, of course, the resource constraint basically means that the economy has to go through a contraction or a bust, and then you find out, it's revealed that those bad investments are revealed as losing investments. And so I put together the Austrian business cycle theory with this eerie correlation that this research report had stumbled across, and it turned out, I published that in 2005, and so we were ready when the housing bubble was taking off, that there was also a record-setting skyscraper taking off in the Middle East, in Dubai, in the United Arab Emirates. And of course, that is now the world's record-setting skyscraper. And in 2006, just when everybody was saying, oh, you can't lose money in real estate and housing prices never go down and so forth, that the new record height was reached in the summer of 2006. And so I started immediately looking at home builder stocks here in the U.S., and sure enough, within a week, the home builder stocks index cracked and experienced a significant fall. And so I alerted readers on LouRockwell.com and Mises.org of these developments. And sure enough, the housing bubble burst, and we started getting all sorts of problems in 2007. And the project over in the United Arab Emirates also got into a lot of problem, and they had to be bailed out to the tune of $10 billion. And when that skyscraper opened for business, basically the company and the country of the United Arab Emirates was bankrupt. And so it fits together really well, and you can go back in time and find out, for example, that the Empire State Building was started at the end of the boom of the 1920s and opened in 1931, a total disaster. World Trade Tower 1 and 2 and the Sears Building were completed in 1971 at the end of a very long boom of the 1960s, ushering in the stagflation of the 1970s, and, by the way, the U.S. being forced off of the gold standard. So these record-setting skyscrapers, whether they're world records or continental records or regional records, tell us a lot about what's going on in the economy, and tell us that there's something wrong that's going on in the economy. And Mo, right now, there's all sorts of projects that are either in process or at least in the planning stages and the development stages for, very tall buildings all around the globe. And so we're very concerned about that, and we're keeping our eye on that as well.
And that's the thing about tall skyscrapers. I mean, these firms have to take a lot of leverage to get these skyscrapers built. I mean, it's not built using cash or capital per se, but they have to take a lot of leverage just to get this tall skyscraper built. And Dubai is a good example of that, and I'm sure the World Trade Center was built on a lot of leverage as well.
Oh yeah, these projects have to get massive financing, and so it takes a lot a lot of money, a lot of loan money to make these projects viable. And so that's why you typically don't see record-setting skyscrapers being built, because bankers and lenders have to sort of let down their guard a little bit, and borrowers have to, get stretched out in terms of their anticipations, their expectations, their models for profit. And generally speaking, real estate projects are guided by, how much is it going to cost, how much can we sell this for, or rent this for, or lease this for, and, can we pay back our loans, can we maintain the facilities, and can we make a profit? And so they're very formula guided. And so it's only when people's guards are let down that they change the formulas so as to make these projects seem viable and profitable, and therefore willing to take on bigger loans, bigger loan payments, and things of that nature.
That's a great point. Now I want to transition here and talk about the economy and the market in general, and get your thought on what's going on in the market and economy. A lot of people out there in 2014 predicted that there would be a market crash, and that's never happened. Mainly believe that Federal Reserve are still printing money and propping up the stock market. And until we have a black swan sort of event, I don't see any crash in the market coming. It will come eventually. Just the timing is unknown. So what is your thought on the market and the economy?
Well, from the Austrian perspective, we don't know the timing. We don't know the magnitudes. We have to guess at that. Economic theory doesn't give us the tools to do that kind of thing. You have to rely on, guesses and empirical work in order to make guesses about turns in the marketplace. And Mo, I never really thought that central bankers would go to these extremes. I never thought that they'd be willing to push capital markets and inflate them to the extent that they have. But basically what they've done is they've said, you can't have your money in a bank, you can't have your money in a savings account, you can't have your money in a CD or a money market. You're going to have to put it in stocks or bonds in order to make money. And so they've cut the cost of borrowing, and people have flooded their wealth into stocks and bonds and pushing it to record heights. And so, I'm very disappointed and concerned that Ben Bernanke and now Janet Yellen have really done extraordinary things to save the bankers. And with the idea that, if we can push stock markets up, that the wealth effect will increase consumption. But that's just all Keynesian nonsense. As I said before, you don't fix an economy by distorting it. You fix an economy by allowing entrepreneurs to unravel the problem caused by central banks. And so I'm very concerned about the state of stock markets and the state of currencies, because they've gone so far for so long. It's really hard to imagine how this thing is all going to unravel and what potential problems may be in the works, because of course you have not just the stock and bond markets, but you have the banks, you have the real estate market, and all of this stuff has been shown to sort of flow out into general social problems. And we've seen this in particular in Europe and in Southern Europe, where demonstrations, protests, strikes, riots have been rather commonplace. And so, we should be expecting that these bubbles cannot last forever, that they will eventually bust, that currency values, the purchasing power of currencies, are going to be lower, although, of course, you can't really say specifically about the dollar, because when there is trouble, people tend to rush into the dollar and rush into U.S. government bonds as the best of all of these bad paper currencies and the best of government bonds. And so there could be a lot of flip-flopping as that crisis develops, but generally speaking, we should expect lower stocks, lower bonds, lower currency values, and this is, of course, is going to be a global phenomenon as it pans out through the future.
And with the government intervention and manipulation, there's a lot of mixed signals being sent into the economy, because when we have a recession, interest rates are supposed to go up, so it'll give an incentive to the people to start saving their money. So it'll build capital and create more jobs. Instead, there's an incentive for people to spend their money because there's inflation and they want to increase consumption because they think that'll create more jobs. So the government does nothing but create bad incentive and send wrong signals to entrepreneurs and business people on what to do when in the current economic condition.
Yeah, I think that's right. They have not allowed for the corrective process to take place, and what they've done is essentially destroyed capital in the American economy, so that basic fundamental building block, which is kind of elusive and hard to, describe, but it's the basic building blocks of the economy, the society, the all the manufacturing plants, office space, warehouse space, transportation facilities. There's less savings that's being done in the U.S. economy. The savings rate is very low. The only place where you see savings is in the pent-up balance sheets of corporations, but of course they're extinguishing that by stock buybacks and things of that nature. So I fear that one of the things that we don't really see, but is in all likelihood happening, is that there's wealth being destroyed, and I think we can see that best because the pool of funding for productive purposes must be contracted because businesses aren't hiring, wages are not increasing, things of that nature. And also, of course, when we look at real disposable income to labor, what we see is that real disposable income for labor has also contracted. And so that's another indication that wealth is being destroyed and that labor cannot be more productive. It's actually being, as in the macro sense, being less productive. And so that's something that I'm very concerned about as well. The destruction of wealth, the true productive capacity of the American economy is something I'm very concerned about.
Yes, and I agree. There's a great wealth transfer going on right now where all the wealth in the middle class is going to the upper class and creating a big gap in income and creating a lot of inflation as well within the middle class, and it's squeezing them right now. And as you said, I'm very concerned as well. Well, Mark, I appreciate your time. If people want to find out more about what you do, where can they go?
Well, the best place in the world, Mises.org, MISES.org. It's the world's largest economic website, and we have stuff on there that's written in common sense language about every subject in the world, as your listeners no doubt understand when we're talking about skyscrapers and housing bubbles and all that. And you can also go to mises.org/free, FREE, and get our free newsletter, The Free Market, which is our flagship publication, and it's a free subscription that's available to all your listeners. And I also encourage people to sign up for our daily articles. And I have a daily article that's just come out where I'm being interviewed about an international perspective on the drug war. So it's a lot of very interesting stuff that's written for your average citizen, and we have lots of audio files and video files of the greatest scholars in Austrian economics. And so that's all available 24/7, 365. It's all for free. You don't have to register or anything, but I do encourage you to sign up for the free newsletter and to also sign up for the free daily articles and get your daily dose of common sense, real-world economics.
Oh, great, Mark. Well, thank you for your time, and hopefully you can come back on again soon.
Oh, yeah, Mo, we have lots more to talk about.
Oh, yeah, definitely. The war on drugs is something I wanted to discuss, but we didn't have enough time. But definitely, the next time you come on, we can definitely discuss that.
I look forward to that, Mo.
If you're tired of losing money with your financial advisor, want to ask better questions to your money manager, or would like to learn to invest on your own, Wall Street for Main Street can help you. Our goal is teaching people how to fish for themselves instead of trusting their financial advisor for everything. Wall Street for Main Street offers high-quality investor education, market research, and consulting for beginners, high-net-worth clients, and anyone else in between that wants to learn to adapt to the current macroeconomic situation, profit off of it, or hedge themselves. Please contact us at wallstreetformainstreet.com. That's WALLSTFORMAINST.com for more information. Also, if you love our podcast and website and would like to donate money so you can continue to get exclusive podcasts from top experts, CEOs, economists, authors, and all of our great guests, please go to our website to donate money, go to our Indiegogo page, or go to our iTunes page and give us a great review. We accept donations in fiat currency, Bitcoin, and also precious metals.